It's Iran number 1 Parham Maghsoodloo taking on Iran number 2 Amin Tabatabaei. The game is happening at the Father Cup in Rusht, Iran. It's a blitz tournament with 5+2 time control, and here Amin goes for c6, the semi-Slav. e3 played here, knight to d7. We are in mainline territory. These two are the absolute best in Iranian chess. Parham currently Iran number 1 with 27-23 and Amin at 27-12. Bishop comes out to d6. It's a very exciting battle there. Let's see who comes out on top. Bishop comes out to e2. Both of them very fighting players. You know, whenever they've played chess, they've always tried to play for the win, and this is what they will do against each other as well. Now castles, and black has many ways to play here. One is rook e8 with the idea of trying for e5. The other is b6, bishop b7. The one plan could also be to take on c4, bishop c4, b5, bishop b7. That also seems completely logical. You can see Tabatabaei taking his time there. It's a 5-minute game, so you have plenty of time to think here, and Parham extremely focused there. It's a 12-round event with more than 300 players taking part, sponsored by the Afzoon group. Takes on c4, and Amin here takes on c4. Parham plays a4, stopping b5. Because if you would have taken here on c4, then b5, bishop d3, bishop b7 is a normal way to play. a4 played, and now e5, breaking in the center. Black has played it in a very standard fashion and has a good position here out of the opening. You can take on c4 or you can take on e5. These are the two possible moves here. Parham taking his time, because if you take on e5, knight e5, knight e5, bishop e5, bishop c4, you can already feel that the king side is a bit soft there. So he takes on c4, e takes, knight takes, and the knight jumps to e5. The bishop comes back. White's only problem is this bishop on c1. It's undeveloped, but a good thing for white is that he has an extra pawn in the center, so later on he can start expanding in the center. Amin plays his rook to e8, a logical move here, and Parham can now put his rook also in the center here on d1. Other plans could include b3, bishop b2, putting the bishop on this long diagonal. I also want to play e4 at some point, but maybe this is not the right time. Rook d1, and queen comes to c7. A good move, putting pressure here on this diagonal. Maybe next idea could be to go knight g4 with the attack on the h2 pawn. So taking the g4 square under control seems like a very logical plan. h3 played here, and now Amin goes knight g6. You can already sense then an attack could be building up with the bishops looking here and the knights on the king side and the rook here. But for now, it does not seem that dangerous, and Parham goes for a5. a6 is going to soften up the position on the queen side. So Amin plays a6 on his own, but now this has weakened the b6 square slightly. Can you take advantage of it with knight a4? Not really, because a5 pawn is hanging. So that's the reason why he plays bishop d2, preparing knight a4 to b6. Let's see how black continues here. I love how this position is building up, the tension building up with black putting all his pieces on the king side. Knight h4. Now looking at the g2 square, the bishop looking in this diagonal. Very interesting. Will Parham go for knight a4 to b6. That would be a very nice geometric move, because one knight moved on the king side, the other on the queen side. He plays bishop e1, trying to keep it safe on the king side. And now Amin can continue with queen e7, maybe with the idea of bringing the queen up to e5 and h2. It's very interesting. You can see Amin adjusting himself in the chair, because he knows this is the key moment of the game. If there are any sacrifices, for example bishop h3 is also something he must be thinking. He goes g6. Maybe he wants to bring his knight back to f5, takes, and bishop f5. Slightly slow move, one must agree. And I think white can now play e4. This is a very good move, because then later on he can also prepare g3, f4, and it would be a very, very powerful position. Also e4 just simply stops all knight f5 or bishop f5 ideas. So e4 is a very strong move. Let's see if Parham plays it. He plays a very nice move, rook a4, and now he's looking at this knight. And if you play knight f5, I can simply come back and later on prepare e4. This rook is very useful along the 4th rank. I love how rook a4 has been played here. Bishop d7 played with the idea of c5, but c5 is not a big threat, because you can always play rook c4, pinning the pawn. But knight f3, Parham gets a bit worried there and makes this move. This actually allows bishop f5 now, because e4 is sufficiently controlled. For example, bishop f5, if you play e4, knight takes, bishop takes, and bishop e6. So this is maybe the way to continue. 2 minutes 10 seconds for Parham, 1 minute 55 seconds for Amin. And bishop f5 played, good move. Parham goes queen b3. I already like black's position now. Knight takes f3, just exchange of the knights. Seems like a good plan. Amin takes, knight f3, bishop takes f3, and now gives a check. You can go both sides with your king, but it does seem logical to put your king on h1. Parham with slightly more time on the clock now, calming himself down, trying to calculate. Black's b7 pawn is definitely weak, but to reach it is not easy. Bishop comes back to e5. And rook a1 is definite sign that things have not worked out so well for white here. h5 played by Amin. And he's definitely having the initiative on his side. How is Parham going to continue? He goes knight a4. He is planning perhaps knight c5 to put pressure on b7, or even knight b6, which could be a nice move. Bishop comes to e4, offering a trade of the bishops. You want to take it? Do you want to come back? This is also possible to come back here on e2, but then bishop d5 hits the queen. Every move is a decision. He takes, knight takes, and brings the king back to g1. I think Amin could play for a draw here. He can play check, king here, go back. I don't know if Parham would agree to a draw, but it seems it's possible. Let's see if he does that. He wants to move his queen. He brings his queen to e7, controlling the c5 square. And now the knight can actually come to b6. There's also a possibility to kick the knight with f3, then put the bishop on b4, then bring the knight to c5. These are all possible ideas here. Let's see how Parham continues now. He has 50 seconds left on the clock. Amin has 1 minute. So Amin has gone up on time. Queen b4, offering a trade of queens. Bishop d6 is a nice move. He comes queen c4. And now do we go queen e5, threatening a mate there. He goes rook a d8 first. Brings the rook in. Parham brings his rook to d4. Game is heating up tremendously. Maybe white wants to bring his rook to d1. There's pressure on the e4 knight, but it is sufficiently defended right now with the rook and the queen. Amin, who's down to 40 seconds now, can go queen e5, but I'm sure that Parham wants to meet it with f4. And then in order to keep your knight protected, you go to f5. And the position is very complicated, but black should be completely fine. He goes queen e5, f4 comes in and blunders big time with queen b5. Rook takes e4 and smiles there. Amin shakes his head in a very tense position. He just blunders there. And Parham puts it back and says, just go back with the queen. The position is completely fine. Rook d1. That was a massive blunder there.